The movie opens up showing Lyra, who is an orphan living at Jordan College in the Oxford of an alternate universe. In Lyra's world, every person is accompanied by a demon, a physical representation of their soul in animal form. Because she is young, Lyra's demon, Pantalaimon, can change his shape to appear as any animal he chooses. He most often appears as an ermine, or at need a moth or a cat. Adults' demons settle into one shape and don't change. Welcome to Movieland. Please help us grow by subscribing and turning on the notifications. It means us a lot. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy. Lyra overhears an interview between the master of Jordan College and Francis Pavel, a representative of the powerful and sinister religious body called the Magisterium. They're discussing an expedition to the far north planned by Lyra's uncle, Lord Asriel. Asriel wants to study a mysterious substance called dust that seems to enter Lyra's world from parallel universes. Francis Pavel pressures the master to withhold his support from Lord Asriel's expedition. The master refuses, so, when left alone in the room, Francis Pavel poisons a decanter of Tokay wine that has been decanted specially for Lord Asriel. Lord Asriel soon arrives, accompanied by his demon, a snow leopard, and pours himself a glass of the poisoned Tokay, but Lyra emerges from her hiding place to stop him from drinking it. She dashes the glass to the floor where it shatters. Lord Asriel sends her back to eavesdrop on the meeting that is about to begin. The master and fellows of Jordan College, plus Francis Pavel, convene to hear about Lord Asriel's proposed expedition and research on dust, which they agree to fund. Asriel is sure that dust is connected with a means to get from one universe to other parallel universes. Pavel tells Asriel that talk of dust is heresy. Even before we meet Lyra, boys and girls have been disappearing, snatched off the streets. The children call the kidnappers gobblers. Lyra and her friend Roger promise one another that if either is caught, the other will come to the rescue. That night, while Lyra is at dinner being introduced to Mrs. Coulter, Roger and another friend, Billy Costa, are taken by the gobblers. At the dinner, Lyra is seated immediately across the table from the master when Mrs. Coulter arrives, accompanied by her demon, a golden monkey. The master and all the scholars are evidently in awe of her. Mrs. Coulter takes a seat right next to Lyra, who is most impressed with her new acquaintance and agrees eagerly when Mrs. Coulter says she is also planning a trip to the far north, and proposes that Lyra come along as her assistant. The master is evidently forced, by Mrs. Coulter's influence in high places, to agree. In the morning, just before Lyra's departure, the master comes to Lyra's little upper room in college and gives her a strange golden instrument called an alethiometer, also known as a golden compass. He tells her that it is capable of telling the truth, but he can't tell her much about how it works. He admonishes her to keep the alethiometer to herself and above all not to let Mrs. Coulter know that she has it. Lyra spends some time in Mrs. Coulter's company, going to expensive shops to be bought new clothes and restaurants to dine with posh people. All the while, Lyra keeps the alethiometer with her in a shoulder bag. One day Mrs. Coulter orders her to stop wearing the shoulder bag, and when the girl shows reluctance Mrs. Coulter has her demon, the golden monkey, half-strangle Pantalaimon. Lyra runs to her room, now hating Mrs. Coulter, hides the alethiometer, then goes to explore Mrs. Coulter's private study. In a waste paper bin Pan finds papers which show that Mrs. Coulter is deeply involved with an arm of the Magisterium called the General Oblation Board, the Gobblers, that the General Oblation Board is using children to investigate something called intercession, and that Billy Costa and Roger the kitchen boy are on a list of boys who have been taken. Immediately after discovering this, Lyra catches Mrs. Coulter's golden monkey demon trying to steal the alethiometer. Pan changes into a bird, grabs it back, and they flee through the upstairs window. They're pursued and caught by gobblers, then rescued by fierce but friendly Egyptians, who have been watching over Lyra at Lord Asriel's request. One of their rescuers is Ma Costa, Billy's mother. Lyra travels with Egyptians and becomes acquainted with Jonfa, Lord of the Egyptians, and his advisor Farter. She learns how to ask the alethiometer questions and how to interpret its responses. She also meets Serafina Pakala, Queen of the Witches, who tells Lyra that she is the subject of a prophecy concerning the fate of the world, that the missing children are being held at Bolvangar in Norway, and that Lyra will find help in Trollesund, a town on the coast of Norway. Meanwhile, Mrs. Coulter has dispatched a pair of mechanical spy flies to locate Lyra. When the spy flies find the Egyptian ship, Farter Coram captures one and seals it up in a tin, explaining that its sting contains a sleeping potion. The other escapes, though it's not clear that it does Mrs. Coulter any good. When they arrive in Trollesund, Lyra meets the Texan aeronaut Lee Scoresby, who offers to help her, but first he wants to get a friend out of a jam. The friend is Yorick, one of the great Panserbjorn, armored ice bears, of Svalbard. Yorick, exiled from his home after losing a fight, is a virtual prisoner in Trollesund. The townspeople got him drunk and stole his armor, which he cherishes the way humans cherish their demons. Now, alcoholic and despairing, he works as a mechanic and metalsmith in exchange for whiskey. Consulting the alethiometer, Lyra learns that Yorick Bernison was heir to the throne of Svalbard until he was betrayed and defeated by Ragnar, the current king. She also learns where the armor is hidden and tells Yorick, who promises in return to help her find the missing children. Lee Scoresby and the Egyptians dissuade the soldiers who try to stop the re-armored bear, and Lyra and her allies march into the interior toward Bolvangar. When they camp for the night, Lyra puzzles over something the alethiometer is telling her and seeks out Yorick Bernison. She asks him to take her to a valley nearby, where she finds Billy Costa, weak and anguished because he's been separated from his demon. This, Lyra realizes, is what intercession means. It's a fate so horrible she and Pan can hardly bear to think about it. Yorick and Lyra take Billy back to the Egyptians' camp, which is immediately set upon by the ferocious Samoyed people who live in that area. They capture Lyra and carry her to Svalbard as an offering to the armored bears. Recalling that Mrs. Coulter told her King Ragnar longs to have a demon of his own, Lyra asks Pan to hide and introduces herself to Ragnar as Yorick Bernison's demon. As she hoped, Ragnar becomes furiously jealous. Lyra tells him that if he can defeat Yorick in single combat, she will become Ragnar's demon. Ragnar agrees to fight Yorick Bernison, and Yorick gallops up on cue, intending to rescue Lyra. When Lyra explains what she's arranged, apologetic and frightened because after running all that way Yorick seems in no shape to fight, Yorick surprises her with his enthusiasm. He wants nothing more from life than a chance to fight Ragnar, and dubs her Lyra Silvertongue for her skillful manipulation of the usurper king. Yorick fights Ragnar and kills him by feigning an injury, then hitting Ragnar so hard his jaw flies off. This victory wins back Yorick Bernison's rightful place as king of the Ice Bears, but he leaves his kingdom to complete his obligation to Lyra. He takes her most of the way to the experimental station at Bolvangar where the children are being held, but has to leave her and go for help when the bridge over a crevasse breaks, leaving Yorick on the wrong side. Later we see inside the experimental station, Lyra asks Roger to get the other children ready to escape. He shows her to a room where she can be alone with the alethiometer, but she has to hide under the table when the experimental station staff and Mrs. Coulter come in. After Mrs. Coulter leaves, Lyra's foot slips, giving her away. She's captured by the staff and she and Pan are put into the intercision device, the machine used to separate children from their demons. The separation is almost complete when Mrs. Coulter, looking terrified, runs in and stops the procedure. Lyra and Pan wake up with their bond intact, and a distraught Mrs. Coulter assures Lyra that she's safe and she'll never be hurt. Lyra, shrinking from Mrs. Coulter, asks why they're separating children from their demons. Mrs. Coulter explains that dust, which she seems to equate with original sin, came into the world long ago when people first disobeyed the authority, God. While children are immune from dust, it contaminates adults through their demons. The goal of the intercision research is to prevent people from ever being affected by dust. Mrs. Coulter says that intercession doesn't hurt, it's just a little cut. If intercession is such a good thing, Lyra counters, why did Mrs. Coulter stop the lab staff from doing it to Lyra? Mrs. Coulter admits that the procedure isn't perfect yet. When she mentions taking Lyra home, Lyra says venomously that her home is Jordan College. Mrs. Coulter reveals that she is Lyra's mother, a relationship Lyra rejects, and that Lord Asriel is her father. Lyra pretends to cooperate when Mrs. Coulter asks for the alethiometer, but gives her instead the tin holding the spy fly. The fly sting knocks out Mrs. Coulter and her demon. Lyra escapes and leads the children out into the snow, pausing only to sabotage the intercession device, which explodes in a very satisfying way. Outside the experimental station the children confront the guards, who attack them. Yorick Bernison intervenes, but is nearly overcome before the arrival, at dramatic intervals, of Lee Scoresby, the witches led by Serafina Pacala, and the Egyptians. There's a ferocious melee. Whenever someone is killed, their demon disintegrates in a swirl of dust. Lyra's friends win the battle. In the end we see that Lyra sets off with Yorick and Lee Scoresby to find Lord Asriel, who has been captured by the Samoyed people. Roger insists on coming along. Meanwhile Mrs. Coulter, having learned that Lord Asriel has bribed his captors and set up a laboratory to continue his research on dust, sets off to stop him. In the final scene, Lyra and Roger curl up with Yorick in the back of Mr. Scoresby's flying machine, heading north. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.